So, Luke, thanks for joining me this afternoon to chat about your FameLab experience. So, you did FameLab back in March. How
Yep.
was it? What was it like?
Um, it was intense. I'll give you that. Yeah, because how busy my PhD has been this year, I didn't get to attend any of the events in the lead up. So basically, I just submitted my video and then turned up to the regional final straight up, and that was quite stressful and intense. But it was really good when I got there. Everyone was very friendly and accommodating, and the crowd was great. But it would be a lie to say I wasn't very nervous. It's obviously nerve-wracking to go up in front of that many people and explain what you're doing with your life, basically.
Absolutely. How did you deal with the nerves on the day?
I don't think I did, to be honest. I think I just turned up and tried not to think about it too much and just act casual to try and convince myself things were calm. But internally, I was absolutely bricking it. But I think that was true for most of the contestants. I think we were all trying very hard to look nonchalant and screaming internally. But it was quite nice when we got there and you were with the other contestants, because they were very friendly and there was a lot of solidarity instead of competitiveness, and we were all hyping each other up and sharing in how stressful it is to do something like this. So it was very non-hostile. It was nice like that.
Good, great. And what were your when you saw the advert go out for the competition, what were your motivations for taking part?
I didn't see the advert go out, actually. I just knew about FameLab independently.
Okay.
Because I grew up in Cheltenham, which is where the final is held, or the UK final is held every year at the Cheltenham Science Festival. So I saw a couple of those when I was younger. When I was between 12 and 14, we went to a couple of FameLab finals at the Science Festival. So I thought, maybe that's still going, and I had a look, and it was. And I decided to send in an entry because it would be very cool to. Obviously, I didn't win my heat, but it would have been very cool to do a talk in my hometown. But also, it's always good to get experience in public speaking, because I think in academia these days it's so competitive, and so there's so many people who are just so clever and so hardworking that it's getting harder and harder to have a USP to stand out. But I think one thing that does lack often, especially in the incredibly hardworking and very clever people, is public communication skills and dissemination. So it's a really crucial skill, and lots of people straight up hate doing public speaking. So if you're a person who's around, who's comfortable doing it and is good at it, then that's really helps you stand out in the application process. I was certainly told that after my PhD application process, as I got in, partially due to the strength of the public speaking work I did beforehand, because a lot of people who do very well in undergraduate and masters don't have to do any at all, and it can be a skill that's rare.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And what would you say are some of the other skills that you've gained from your FameLab experience?
FameLab is the first time in years I pitched to such a general audience. So I think the main thing I got from it, from my own skill set, is pitching at the right level. Because in academia, you spend all your time in people similar, who are in just as deep as you are, as it were. And you use words that to you don't even register as jargon anymore. And to go through your own thoughts and your own story of why you're there makes you actually really deeply think about what you're saying. Because the first version of a little script I typed out had so much jargon in it, but I didn't even notice it until I got someone else to read it, and they were like, half these words aren't in normal usage. It's because you spend so much time dealing with people in your area. So it's really useful exercise to remember to get out of your little area. But it's also challenging because you don't want to patronize anybody, because people who come to a FameLab show are science enthusiasts. They like science, they want to know more about science, and they may be scientists themselves. So you cannot be pitching this to a school child level or really oversimplify it. You need to keep the complexity of the idea without using jargon, and that's difficult. But I think that's a really useful exercise, because it's often when people oversimplify, when people simplify, in my opinion, they go too far, and it ends up sort of insulting the intelligence of the audience. And when you're at FameLab, you're pitching to people who like science already. You don't need to worry about convincing them the whole thing's not worth it in the first place. And you don't want to patronize them either, because they probably consider themselves quite smart people, and they're probably right as well. And the second good skill is that 3 minutes is no time at all. It's almost nothing. It's over in a heartbeat. Like being up on stage, I felt like a blink of an eye, to be honest. I barely seemed like time passed at all when I was up there. And condensing something like, in my case, I know master students and full-on researchers and other people will also enter FameLab, but PhD in the UK takes 3 years, 6 months as a standard UKRI one, and condensing that story down into 3 minutes is quite a brutal and in some ways a sad exercise, because you have to chop off so much, like while leaving the core and while leaving a story that makes sense. So it's really, it was a good exercise to try and boil right down to, what am I doing? Why do I care about it? And why should you care about it?
Yeah.
But there was obviously, I don't think I could get a reasonable overview of my thesis done if I had an hour-long lecture to give. So doing that in 1/20th of the time means you have to be very selective. But that's a really good exercise, because again, it's about talking to the correct audience, because when you're speaking to your fellows, you have to justify your decisions very carefully, because they're in the same field, and they might look at one of your methodological steps and be like, why did you do that? And you spend a lot of time basically defending yourself before people can ask questions. And when you're pitching to a more general audience, you can cut all that fat out and just stand by your work. And I'm not saying that you should present shoddy work, but like the instinct to like defend yourself against the professor in the crowd who's going to put their hand up at the end is strong in a lot of people, I think, and you've got to fight it.
Yeah, and building on that, Luke, what do you think that presenting at FameLab gives you that maybe presenting in a more formal kind of research environment doesn't?
Yeah, well, I suppose that's quite similar to what I got from it. Again, I think is different audience, although there's usually more around for that than you think. It's always useful to pitch to as many audiences as possible, I think, because we get so lost in our own work and it's difficult to get out. The other thing that got me is like the whole experience of doing it in a more like the FameLab setting and other stage settings like festivals and stuff. I've been up on stage for other reasons in the past and done other talks in very intense situations, and it's very different when you've got the studio lights in your face and there's a guy in a flashy suit introducing you. Like it's different. Like when you're presenting to academics, they'll forgive you for like umming and ahhing and wandering about in front of the projector and pointing things out, and it really challenges you to it's just a different experience, and it gives you an opportunity to experience that before. Well, you might have to do it like in quotes for real, because like what we ended up getting interviewed for the news or something, because that happens to a lot of scientists at one point. Then you'll be in front of the cameras in the studio unprepared, and that's a terrifying idea to me, at least. So it's just the experience of having to go up in a full-on stage is just very different than being behind the lectern with your laptop. It's just not the same at all. And it also gives you the opportunity. It's just an opportunity to test how relatable you can make your work. And like, I keep harping on about this, but like, I'm a firm believer, especially because I do climate science work, that my work is only worth anything if it gets out. Like if it stays in a journal, no one ever hears about it, then it won't do much good. So I personally think an opportunity to try and do that with a far more general audience is really important, because I think science that stays locked up isn't really that helpful. But then again, some science is so hardcore and so delicate, like maybe biochemistry, that no one is ever going to make a TV show about how to like individually modify biomolecules, because that's incredibly dry and technical. But but why are you doing that? Can still make it interesting, and just that exercise is really useful, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and what would you say that kind of, have you changed the way in which you do things, or will you change the way in which you do things as a result of your FameLab experience?
Yes, I will be making a couple of changes. The first change I would make is I practiced it a couple of times, but it wasn't nearly enough, like in front of people, and just to get it to time. But because it's so stressful up there, having seen the video back, I definitely spoke too quickly at the start, and then ended up not quite using all of my time. So I think more practice. You can't before you go up is what I do, because I really didn't have time to do much practice on this one, because my PT isn't very intense this year. But then again, for me, that suits me. I prefer to have a off the cuff kind of style. I don't think I think it's possibly, I don't know how to do say without sounding bad, is like be a little bit less sanguine, I suppose, because I feel like seeing it back, I was a little too honest about how the sausage was made in some cases. That's what I'm talking about, just being proud of your work and showing it off, and talking about its impact rather than trying to complain about how annoying it is to do the science. I did a bit too much of that. Although a little bit, I think, makes you relatable.
Yeah, definitely.
I suppose the third thing is just it hasn't, because I did it quite well, I think, by my standards on the first try. I think it's reinforced some things I do, because I think a couple of contestants made the mistake of going like overly rehearsed. I think maybe that's a little bit harsh, but like they came in full suits with flashy demonstrations, and it's like you can tell when the person doesn't normally wear a suit and they don't look comfortable, and you can tell. And you've only got three minutes. Do you have time for a demo? No, you don't. So like it's definitely reinforced my feeling that being genuine is really important, and that just time goes so quickly when you're talking to people. Like even 10 minutes is nothing.
Absolutely.
It's no time at all. Yeah.
Great. And you've said that you watched the video back. Have friends and family also watched your presentation? If so, what did they think?
A handful have seen it, yeah. We've all been very positive about it so far, yeah. They've said that apart from it being obvious that right at the start of the talk, I was talking too quickly and clearly very nervous, but by the end I'd settled into it and they really liked it. So I think it's been a really positive reception from my friends and family. So they've definitely picked up on the nervousness, and that's something I need to work on, but that's not much easier said than done. But yeah, they've all been very, very nice about it.
Great. And Luke, kind of the final question I want to ask you is, if there are people watching or listening this interview today, what would you say to somebody that's considering applying for FameLab?
I would say that there's really no downside to it at all. The whole exercise is useful end to end, like filming yourself, writing scripts, presenting your ideas in a really short amount of time is just such a useful exercise, because like in 3 minutes is really short, but like especially if you are in the line of work that I'm in, the academia process or whatever, or you're already an academic, like conference talks are getting shorter, and it's often 5-minute flash talks at conferences these days. And like just being able to get your ideas across quickly and succinctly is really good. And also because FameLab divorces you from a lot of your crutches. Like, you can't have your PowerPoint. You can have like a prop, just the one. It's a really useful exercise to be able to get your point across without any pictures, basically, and that's difficult. But it's really useful to think about how to do it and learn how to do it, because even then, when you're having brief interactions with people around the place, it makes you better at getting across what you do and why, without reaching into your bag and saying, "Here's a graph," which no one's going to stick around for, especially if you're in the pub or whatever. So that's really good. And I suppose the only bit of advice I would have for potential contestants is that I think there's a fine line between doing yourself up and trying to look like you're super slick and know what you're doing, and that coming off as a bit fake. I think you need to be an honest version of yourself, because I think people struggle to relate when scientists pretend to be all-knowing, because we're not. And it's okay, because we're all here because there's things we don't know and we want to know. And your audience is there to find out as well. So don't be afraid of a bit of uncertainty, because it's nice to leave a question mark, like there's more to come, But yeah, I can just say that it's such a small amount of work to enter, and the benefits are quite large. Like, I got quite a bit of coverage in my university's press for even getting third in People's Choice. Like, I got into quite a few newsletters. So it does raise your professional profile if you do well. Even then, it's such a useful skill exercise. It's such a low barrier to entry that I think it's really interesting and really good to do, and also can help you remember why you started in the first place, if you try and boil it down to make it interesting to someone else.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks, Luke. Thanks for chatting with me this afternoon, taking time out of your busy schedule in the lab to chat about your experience.